Well, the blog is jimshooter.com. The first convention I went to, I worked in comics for 8 or 9 years before I knew that there were fans. Because at DC they told you that comics were read by kids who were 6 to 8 years old, and that was it. And they buy them up in the newsstand and they throw them away. Okay, that's what my bosses told me, and then I discovered that no, there were, especially because Marvel came along and started like attracting older readership. I finally discovered that there were fans, there were people who were older who actually cared about it and saw it more deeply, liked the art and so forth. And I went to my first convention. I didn't know there were conventions. I went to my first convention, I believe in '73, it could have been '74. It was a Phil Suling July 4th convention at the Commodore Hotel. And the Commodore Hotel was an aging, dying hotel, and on the mezzanine was all massage parlors and all these sort of half-naked women would be looking over the railing at us geeks, wondering what the hell was going on.
So what you're saying, you guys were in heaven, probably?
Yeah.
Those are
No, and
the glory
it
days.
worried me a little because I looked around and I saw a bunch of people sort of my age, 20s and 30s, and I didn't see any kids, and I didn't see any women. And I thought, oh my God, where are the 6-year-olds? Where are the 8-year-olds? This is the audience. And once again, I thought I've been doing this wrong. But anyway, so I've seen it evolve, and I'm really happy to come here and see the diversity of the audience, all ages. I love the little kids in the costume. I think it's great. And if I had to respond about what I think is happening, where I think it's going, for many years I've thought that it just seemed to me that all the media are converging. That television, all these guys are educated and have deep knowledge. I'm just looking at it. I'm a comic book guy. I don't know, but it always seems to me that it's converging. That the farther down the road we go, the more the video games and the movies and the television are all kind of becoming one thing. And comics kind of lag behind because we've got the biggest leap to make from the printed page to the digital world. And it's a hard leap because it's still tough to draw using just the computer. Most comic book art is still done on paper and then scanned in. So it just seems to me that there is going to be a convergence. Even comics are going to be dragged into it. I had the privilege to go to the Tribeca Film Festival luncheon earlier this year, I think it was in June, and the subject was new media of the presentation that they gave. And I saw two things in particular that they showed some new editing techniques and some crazy stuff that I can't even understand. But the two things that really impressed me is one fellow had invented a camera where he could photograph you, but this camera was equipped somehow that it would take 360-degree pictures. So when you're looking at the movie that he shot on your iPad, and you tilt it, you see the sky, and you tilt it this way, and you see the ground, and you tilt it this way or that way, and you turn around, and you see everything. Okay? Brilliant.
So in the audience is like,
Another development.
The future.
Another development I saw, and I think this is brilliant too, is somebody was making a documentary film about the rebellion in Egypt, and what they were doing is they were gathering in all of the millions of hundreds of thousands of videos and pictures taken by people walking around with these things and video cameras and so forth. And so it was a new way of taking a massive amount of points of view and bringing them together. These two things tell me that I believe that part of the evolution of all media, and including comics when we catch up, is going to be that it's going to be a lot more collaborative. And there's going to be a lot more, kind of choose your own adventure, if you will, a lot more involvement of the audience in the entertainment, in the content. That's one. And number two, there are these technological, incredible things like the camera that sees every which way. So you don't have to be content with what the guy wants to show you. He takes you to a situation and then you explore it on your own. Groovy. Okay, and I think that the thing that I'm seeing that it was mentioned down here someplace that content and distribution are being affected by this massive change in technology. And I would add that, especially from the point of view of us comics guys, and we're hoping, is that it will also affect art production, because right now it is extremely labor intensive. It's one thing to sit there and type on your little laptop and then you have something you can post on your blog. It's quite another thing to draw 22 pages of a comic book, and it's very difficult, and it takes a lot of time, but I think that technology is going to help us out there, and I'm not equipped to tell you how. But anyway, I believe that all of these things are gathering together and making a much more collaborative, interactive, and consumer-controlled experience. I don't know so much about the money, and I'm kind of a stranger to money, but I assume that because people become more involved, that the money will be there to finance the technology and the development of the technology and our participation in it.
Cory?
Oh, yeah. I agree with everything you just said, but I think that what's missing when we talk about new forms, like a camera that can see all the way around or a narrative that you can explore on your own, is that we have to figure out what stories fit those narratives. So like there are certain kinds of stories, most of the stories that we really like have an element of coercion, right? Like in the same way that the dungeon master doesn't tell you what's happening in the what's in the next room until you get there, because it wouldn't be a fun game. The comic doesn't let you choose whether or not you hear the punchline first or the joke first, right? And there are a whole bunch of narrative forms that if there's humor to be had, it's not had in the way that we know how to do it today. That you can't do suspense in which the reader can turn to the last page. You have readers have always been able to choose to turn to the last page, but it was always with the understanding that this would massively diffuse the suspense in the story. And so we get a lot of things that look like sort of IMAX movies in these new media, right? So an IMAX movie, every IMAX movie I've ever seen is an advertisement for IMAX movies. I've yet to see the IMAX movie that is an IMAX movie, because IMAX is a difficult medium. It's 40 minutes long maximum, and you can't record synchronized sound while you're doing it because the cameras are so loud. And so like no one's ever figured out how to do an IMAX movie that isn't like, look at what you could do with IMAX movies if we could figure out what to do with IMAX movies.
It's the fabulous life of Bieber.
That's right, yeah.
Look at the very
roller
large
coasters,
Bieber,
you know,
and
going up.
I like the weather one, actually.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I think panoramic cameras are awesome, but panoramic cameras have been around for a long time. Circle Vision 360 premiered at the 1964 World's Fair.
See, I told you, these guys all know this stuff. I'm just seeing it for the first time.
Well, but Disney did it, right? Disney did it with 12 cameras, 8 cameras, film cameras in a circle. And they drove it across America's highways, right? And they did this movie called America the Beautiful that they showed at the 64 World's Fair, moved to Disneyland, it was there forever. And
they've gotten better at it.
They have, but no one figured out how to make a story out of it. I've seen a lot of panoramic experiments.
So you need better writers. You need better creators.
But you need creators who grew up with it and go, I know how to tell that story.
Or someone who's old but can still learn.
That's right.
But
JimShooter.com.
No, but go ahead. But I think to that point is that once, from a technological standpoint, once we get it into an iPad or an iPhone that can then do that, I think then we get people who've grown up with it and get people who learn how to tell stories with it.
yeah,
So
new creative challenges, and isn't that what we live for?
But the next part of this is that in order to get there, it has to be cheap. Because right now, a lot of the tool chains in sort of in the expensive media, like one of the reasons no one's gotten really good at IMAX is that it's hard to make a lot of, the way to double your success rate is to triple your failure rate. You need a very deep-pocketed patron who's willing to let you triple your failure rate with IMAX films, right? Comics, one of the reasons comics have come as far as they have, I think, is because for all that they're labor-intensive, they're not capital-intensive, right? Like people who've invented things like, if you look at all the really cool, weird, inventive stuff, it's things like it happening in zines. There was a whole new visual vocabulary invented for xerography. Why was there a visual vocabulary invented for xerography? Not because photocopiers were awesome, but because photocopiers were cheap. And so you could fail a lot with photocopiers without breaking the bank. So I look forward to panoramic storytelling and interactive branching narrative storytelling. I haven't seen a lot of great stuff, and I suspect it's because it's too expensive.